Everyone, Nick Marzinski here at trappinglight.com, and I want to talk about something in Photoshop that you're probably not terribly familiar with: links. Now, normally when you think of things like links, it's usually internet-related stuff, hyperlinks, that sort of thing. But in Photoshop, links allow us to apply edits or changes to multiple layers or multiple aspects of a layer simultaneously, and that can simplify your edits pretty substantially. Here's an example. And this is really what got me thinking about it. Here's a picture of my daughter that I edited into the family Christmas card this year. Now, if you look at her hair right here, you can see that there's this little gap here, which I really don't like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer down here in the Layers palette. Not a new group, a new layer. And I'm going to grab the clone stamp tool by pressing S. And then I'm going to zoom in, actually. There we go. Now I'm going to hold down Alt or Option to click my sample point, and then I'll just click right there, and then I'll move over to where I want to drop the sample, and then I'll just start editing and paint right over the area that I want to get rid of, and I'll just do a little bit more there. And if we zoom back out, you can see that that looks pretty good. That's pretty much what I want. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to add some text. So I'm going to come over here to my text tool, and I'm going to just set it right there, and I'm going to type Merry Christmas. Let's try that again. Text tool, drop the text. There we go. Merry Christmas, that looks better. From my family. Click OK. Switch back to the Move tool and bring it right on to the page. Okay. Now the problem is that the text is over my daughter. So what I really want to do is I want to grab my daughter by selecting her on the Layers palette, and then I want to move her over. And well, you can see what happened here is that I moved the image of my daughter right here. But unfortunately, what I left behind is this edit of her hair. So the gap is back here, and you can see that the edit of the hair is right here. If I undo that change, you can see, again, when I move it, I'm moving the image of my daughter, but I'm leaving this edit behind. Okay, and that's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do is I wanted to move both of them simultaneously. However, since they're both on separate layers, my daughter here, and then the retouch here, they can be independently edited. And normally that's a good thing, but here I don't want them to be independent. I want them to function as a single layer. Now I could just select both of them and then click Merge Layers, and that would take care of it. But the problem if I do that is that that's also imperfect, because then I lose the ability to re-edit that fix that I made to her hair if I ever want to do that. What I want is I want a way to link both of the layers while keeping them separate. And here's how you do that. First, what you have to do is select both layers in the Layers palette. So you hold down Shift or click the first one, and then hold down Shift and click the other one. Okay, so now they're both selected. They're both highlighted here in the Layers palette. Then all you have to do is on the bottom of the Layers palette, there's this little image of a chain right here. You just click on that. And at that point, what happens in the Layers palette, you can see, is that it adds this chain icon to both of these layers. These layers now are linked. Okay, and any edits that I make to one of them will be applied to the other. So now if I just click on this layer of my daughter and I move it, you can see that the hair fix that I made to her layer to her hair here also moves with it. But it's not just limited to moving. If I decide to resize this layer, because it's linked with the other ones, now both the image of my daughter as well as the fix that I made to her hair are resized together. So they're both separate layers. I can edit them separately. However, any changes that I make in terms of transforming them, moving them, resizing, anything are applied to both of them. And that's really what I want. Let's take a look at another example that has to do with links that's probably pretty familiar with, that you're probably pretty familiar with, and that's layer masks. So I'm going to add another new layer here. I'll drag it up here. And then I'm going to fill it with red. So I'm going to hold down Shift and hit F5 to bring up the fill. I'm going to choose a color. and I'll just choose red. Red's okay. Click OK, and it fills the entire layer with red. Now I'm going to grab my elliptical marquee tool over here, or I can just press M, and I'm going to draw a circle right around where I think my daughter is, right there. So that draws a circular selection, and then I'm going to add a layer mask by clicking the layer mask icon here. Okay, and actually I'm going to invert that by holding Shift and, Control or Command I. Okay, so there we go. Now I've added a layer mask so that I've got this oval around where my daughter is. Now, what I want to do is I want this oval to be centered right around my daughter. So I'm going to grab my Move tool by pressing V again, and I'm going to grab it and I'm going to move it. And here's, you can see where the problem is, okay? In this case, what happened is that the edge of this red fill here came onto the image, and that's not what I want. What I wanted to do is I just want to move the layer mask here in my layers palette without moving the actual layer itself. When I move the layer itself, the layer is only the size of the image document, and so if I move it a little bit, and then I can see the edge of that layer because it's only as big as the size of the document. What I want to do, again, and I'm going to just reverse it so that it goes back, what I want to do is I only want to move the layer mask without moving the layer. Now you can see here that there's this image of a chain again that we are familiar with, okay? And what Photoshop is telling you with that image is that the layer itself and the layer mask are linked. If I move one because they're linked, I'm also moving the other. Okay? In order to change that, all I have to do is I click on the link right here, which gets rid of it, and now whichever one I've selected in the layers palette is the one that I'm going to be acting on. So if I want to just move the layer mask, then I click on the layer mask so you can see that there's the brackets around the layer mask, and then I'm moving the layer mask, but the actual layer itself right here is staying the same. In the same way, if I want to move the layer, I can move the layer itself, but the mask stays exactly right where I put it. So that's a very quick and easy, powerful, simple tool to be able to use to make editing and working with your images easier. One thing that I also want to point out is wherever you see this icon of a chain in Photoshop, that shows you something that you can either link or unlink. So, for example, if I decide to create a shape right here, you can see up here up at the top where it's looking at the width and the height, there is a chain. And since that chain is selected, you can see that it's highlighted. If I type in a different number here, so if I set this to like 800, because they're linked, the aspect ratio stays the same. So when I change the width, the height also changes. If I disable that link, however, and then change it back to say 400, now the height stays the same, but the width is the only thing that changes because there is no link between them. Okay, so whenever you see that chain icon within Photoshop, know that that's something that you can either link or unlink, and depending on how you deal with that, will change the way that the image behaves when you make an edit to it or make a change to it. So that's all I've got right now on links right within Photoshop. Again, my name is Nick Marzinski with TrappingLight.com. Hope you found this tutorial helpful. Thanks.